Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to this new series, and please welcome my guest for this episode. Part of the NY Giants Rush team, it is Shawn. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, man? Glad to be here. Excited to talk with you.
Yeah, it's nice to have you back. Obviously, last time we were talking training camp, and we've had 3 preseason games since then, so probably maybe a change in tact and opinion. But let's
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, let's see. This is gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting. Let's see how it goes today.
So this is obviously a new series we're doing with fans. It's kind of reaching its conclusion now, which is a bit sad. But fans, content creators, super fans, beat writers, we've had them all. So quick fire, or five-ish questions, and then the quick fire round. So we'll get straight into it.
Awesome.
Um, it normally starts with the start, and I know for you guys over in the States, it's kind of a lot earlier probably than us. But how did the Giants fandom start for you?
I mean, I was born into it. So my
Hmm.
grandfather was a Giants fan. My father was a Giants fan. So I really didn't have a choice, and I'm glad I didn't have a choice because it's been fun. I've been fortunate. I've been a fan for 45 plus years. So I've seen 5 Super Bowl appearances, 4 Lombardi trophies, a lot of exciting moments, and yeah, man. So I was born in it from a very early age. My first jersey was Brad Van Pelt, so that tells you how far back I go.
What about first game? Do you remember that?
Uh, yeah. So my first game was, I believe it was against the Washington Redskins. They were the Redskins at that time.
Mm.
I don't remember the year. I might have been like 1982, so I might have been like 8 years old. We my mother worked for doctors who had season tickets, to the Giants, so we also got to go to some, preseason games,
Mm.
but that's the first regular season. I remember going to a St. Louis Cardinals, regular season game as well, and we got those tickets because the Giants weren't good in either of those years, so and it was later in the season, so
So let's kind of talk last season. Let's start there.
okay.
How do you sum it up?
What's the age limit of the people that watch your show?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I'd sum it up as a shit show. That's the best way
Yeah.
I can say it. I mean,
Mm,
if something could have went wrong, it went wrong last year, right? So,
mm.
um, I'm trying to forget last season the best I can and hope it's not a repeat this year because, again, it was just so many things that sorry, between between quarterback injuries, O-line injuries, the problems with the defensive coordinator, like everything was just it was bad, man. So, yeah, that's the best way I can describe it.
And then obviously as we went through the preseason, we got Hard Knocks, which was
Yep,
interesting.
yep,
Obviously we saw a lot with Hard Knocks.
yep.
Now that the sort of dust has settled on that whole series, what's the takeaway from it?
Listen, I enjoyed it. I think I had mentioned this before.
Mm,
We got a lot more insight behind the curtain than I thought we were going to get. I really enjoyed watching that. I'm glad they did it. It made sense to me that they showed it. Um, I really, again, seeing what they were looking as far as quarterbacks, the draft, the people, other people in the front office that names we don't get to hear a lot, and just how they broke it down. And what was awesome too was just knowing that now we have a draft room that is in the 21st century, where before,
mm.
it was not. So I enjoyed that. I really did. I thought it was good, and I'm glad we got as much as we did. I think it put a lot of to me, put a lot of narratives to bed that were out there that just weren't true.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've kind of gone through this preseason now. As I said, when you and Craig were with us last time, it was just before the Lions game. In fact, it was after the fight frenzy that was
Yeah,
the first joint practice. So we've
yeah,
seen a half of Daniel Jones in the first team offense. We've seen a little bit more of the defense.
Yep.
How do you kind of sum up the preseason? Because in a way, it was pretty underwhelming, but it's preseason, right?
Right. Exactly. You're not going to get a lot. I mean, I know there's people who don't like this term, but it's very vanilla in the preseason. Like you get more out of joint practices. I get you can't hit the quarterback. So my take was, I guess maybe a little different than a lot of people. Um, I was looking a lot at the O-line play. And the
Mm,
other thing that I know, which you can see the differences of how they were more in lockstep with each other than they have in years past. They were hip to hip, ankle to ankle, like they were moving together, communicating well. So you wanted to see that. So I didn't care who they were going against. I just wanted to see that. The other thing I took away from it was, especially in that first preseason game against the Lions, like how many times in year past have our twos and threes just got absolutely destroyed by another team's twos and threes? Like we were right there with Detroit, who's a Super Bowl contender, did well against, our twos versus their twos and so on. So to me, that shows there's more depth on this roster that has been. Um, and again, defensively, there's some guys that stood out that we didn't really think about. And there wasn't a lot of schematics going on where it was basically we're going to line up head to head and see what our guys do. So when we start adding schemes into the defense, into the offense, I think we'll see something different. Um, I just want to see development in the preseason, and that's what I saw. And again, I was focused mostly on the O line, and I liked what I saw from the O line. They just need to now carry over into the regular season and do it, when it counts.
I think if correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, but when we spoke last time, you sort of mentioned that you've done you played and you coached as well, right?
I did, yeah. I was a former college player, former college coach.
Yeah, so when you kind of look at the preseason and you look at everybody kind of jumping in on the defense and how it looked, is that something that you can quite easily just kind of defend with like, well, schematically, it's so much more simpler during the preseason?
Yeah, you can because they're not gonna and from the defensive side, they're gonna line up. They're gonna play more man than they would in the regular season. Like Bowen's gonna play a lot more zone, so he's gonna go more two, three safety looks, two high safety. So you're just seeing what you have, when you line guys up and play man to man. So our strength is not playing man to man, press man, defense with our corners, right?
Mm,
So that's what I see. What I also liked is, you didn't have a lot of your like the pass rush, right? Like how much did Burns play? Like how much did Tibbs play? So you're going to see guys in the regular season that are going to get more pass rush, and that's what's going to help our secondary is they're really going on. All right, we need our front four to get after the quarterback, and that's going to take the pressure off our cornerbacks. And again, when he's able to scheme up, decide coverages, he's going to make it where our athletes are going to be able to be athletes again and not trying to like trick teams too much and let them play fast and free. That's my take. That's my understanding. So when I see that in the preseason, to your point, it's like, all right, well, they're just lining up and playing simple defense. So now we know, all right, let's see what we can do schematically when it comes to the players that we have.
And
I don't know if that made sense. Hopefully it did.
no, no, absolutely, absolutely. Now, one kind of key thing from our defense that was glaringly obvious was obviously CB2.
Yeah.
That's been addressed in the last couple of days. What are your thoughts on Adoree being back? Because I'll hold my hands up. When I was asked in January, I said no,
Yeah.
and I now think it's just what we need almost right now.
Yeah, I didn't want him back based on, his lack of what I thought was a lack of effort
Yeah.
last season.
Hmm.
My hope is that because there was people that came out and players that really complained about Wink's defense and the way he did things. I'm hoping that has something to do with it as well. I know he was injured last year.
Mm.
Um, you know, uh, Bowen was the linebackers coach when Adoree was in Tennessee. Ryan Coden, who's in our front office, he was there at Tennessee. So I'm hoping that familiarity can do some things. My goal is I just want to see the team get better. So if they think Adoree makes the team better and it gives them more depth, then I'm all for it. So bring them in and they they worked them out. They'll see things. So I just hope again he can give a better effort than what I saw, last season. And he seems like he wants to be back. He said today that, was never personal. He never closed the door on coming back to the Giants. He knows it's just a business.
Mm.
So I'm hoping that will again, I'm hoping it was just a wink thing there, because that can do it. If you don't like a coach you're playing for, you're not going to give the same kind of effort.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then, you know, we've since also gone through cuts, so 90 down to 53. A lot of players maybe didn't make it that we thought might. Jakob Johnson has been moved around more times than any other player probably in the league already.
Yeah.
Any surprises on people making it? Because we had Elijah Riley and Jake Kubas, two undrafted rookie free agents, both make the roster.
Yeah, so the only one that was a surprise, and he's not on it now, which I understand, based on moves, but was CJ Cloyd who made the practice squad. So I know you kind of asked roster, but I'm, addressing with him because he really only kind of showed out in that Jets game, which is what you want, right? If you're going to make a name, do it in that last
Mm,
preseason game. So that was a little bit of a surprise for me. I kind of knew like Chapman would make it. I had a feeling he would based on where our depth was and just the things I'd read and learned about him, when they signed him initially. Um, I wasn't surprised on Darnay Holmes being let go. And again, based on he played a lot in that Jets preseason game. So that says to me, all right, you're trying to get things on film or you're trying to let him show that he deserves to be on this roster. So, yeah, there wasn't big surprises. And listen, Johnson, they're going to move him up and down. That's just roster manipulation. Like
mm, mm.
he's going to be there. And it was nice to see the difference he made. Like there was runs where the blocks he made, if he wasn't there, like in years past, it would have been like a 2 or 3 yard loss. Then it turned into a 2 or 3 yard game. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about our O-line coach is a proponent of the fullback as well. So bring him on.
Yeah, and obviously Carmen's got previous with Johnson for a few years, which is always going to help because he can install that kind of schematics very, very quickly with him as he comes up and down the roster.
Exactly. You got 3 guys now that have played with Brazil, Van Roten, Illuminor, and Johnson. So that's huge. I
Mm.
would say like a surprise cut that, but it makes sense to me when you look at it. I was surprised they cut McKeithen, but he hasn't stayed healthy. So in that case, it makes sense. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It was interesting actually because we saw the sort of the first cuts from the Joe Shane era because obviously we saw Darian Beavers also go.
yeah.
So that's two players from the first draft of his.
Yeah, and what that shows to me too is, I mean, Beavers, I mean, he was missing tackles left and right. Another guy that wasn't injured, and what I like because if I don't know if you guys got a whiff of this, across the pond, but so many Giants fans over here would complain about how the Giants were so slow in moving on from players. So that shows that Shane, hey, you know what? We had 2 guys that were injured. They didn't do what we thought we are going to do. We're not going to hold on to dead weight. We're going to get rid of them. And
Mm.
instead of complaining like, oh, his draft picks weren't good, like, no, he understands. Like you're improving the roster. You get guys that didn't do what they thought you were going to do. And they were 5th and 6th round picks. So I mean, it makes
Yeah,
sense. So I was glad to see that of like, hey, we're not just going to hold on to guys because we picked them. We're gonna get the best guys we can.
yeah. Let's be honest. As you go through the draft, you're going to hit and you're going to miss. And as you rightly said there, the biggest thing as a general manager is to admit that you've missed and kind of let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like don't hang on to guys for too long.
No. So obviously, while we're on the draft, a lot of players came in. We brought in a lot of players in free agency.
Yep.
Everybody has the two obvious ones of Neighbours and Burns, so I'm going to
Yep.
exclude those.
Okay. Yeah.
Who makes the biggest impact for the Giants from the new recruits?
So I'm gonna how do I want to do this? I'm gonna say the 3 linemen that they brought in, Runyon, Illuminor, and Van Roten. Like
Mhm, mhm.
that's gonna be huge to me when it comes to that. Now free agents. Yeah, I'm gonna say those 3 because again we've seen how bad the O line has been the last couple of years. So now
Mm.
you bring in those 3 guys, they solidify, they do the things, they open up, the holes for the running back, they give quarterback time to throw. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with those 3.
Cool. And then, without giving a prediction, because we'll do that at the end,
Yeah, yeah.
what's the expectations and hopes?
I want to see really good football. I know, like you said, we're going to do a prediction later on, but I just want to see really good football. That's what I want to see. Like I want to see us be competitive. I don't want to see us getting blown out by the Cowboys anymore. They're gonna lose games. I mean, that's football, but it's the way in which you lose those games that matter to me. We shouldn't lose 40-0 to the Cowboys. Like that should not happen anymore. So if we lose by a touchdown, then that shows progress. That shows depth. We beat Philly at the end of last year, so that can be done. Though that's the biggest things that I really want to say. I just want to see this team improve, as a football team. And when it comes to the quality of play, I want
Mm.
wins. That's what matters to me. It's not how they win, it's that they win. That matters to me most.
And that's almost what we did in 2022, wasn't it? Is we ground out a few of those wins that maybe we weren't supposed to get, but we made sure that we did it. Us in London against the Packers was one of those where we were like down 14 at the half, and all of a sudden we ground it out and walk away with the win. And you can probably focus on about 4 or 5 games that season. But you look at last season, there was just so many times where we rolled over and just said, "All right, let's move on to next week," during the game almost.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because a lot of people don't, forget this is, and I know you can do the what ifs and coulda, shoulda, wouldas on the
Mm,
opposite end, but think about if Graham Gano doesn't get hurt. Like, there's
mm.
at least 2 or 3 more wins right there when you look
Yeah,
at the Rams, right, the Jets, and then I forget the other team, but we could have potentially had 9 wins last year. And again, I know you can do the opposite end of well, we could have lost that game, but when it comes down to it, we have a kicker. I think it's a different story. And again, that's what everything that we called a shit show earlier. So, there's reason
mm.
for optimism in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's crack through the predictions then. So when we get to the end of this season, who do you think will be named the most valuable giant on offense?
I think it's going to be Malik Neighbors.
Mhm.
I think he's going to have a huge, huge impact for us. They're going to feed him the ball. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. Yeah. So Malik Neighbors for me.
Well, let's switch it across to the defense then.
Yeah. It's going to be
Sure.
Burns. It's going to be
Mhm.
Burns. Right? Like, I mean, you could say Tibbs, but I just think, Burns been in the league longer, so he's on a different level. Now it could open up opportunities for Tibbs because if he starts getting double teamed, but I'm gonna say Burns. He looks like I mean, he's a difference maker on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the spin move in preseason, and
Oh my
it's
god.
just it's poetry, isn't it? It's just so silk.
Yeah, it was like Dwight Freeney-esque type of
Mm,
spin move. It was that good, right? I'm not saying it
yeah,
was on that level, but it was similar to that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then what about someone who's going to be the surprise package for this year?
So on offense, I'm gonna say, Tyrone Tracy Jr.,
Mhm.
and then on defense, I'm gonna say Tyler Nubin.
Oh, I think yeah, Tyler Nubin's been almost one player that's been mentioned probably more than 50% of the time that we've done these. I think he's very, very highly thought of, and it's going to be interesting when he settles.
Yeah, and again, think about where he started. So he was injured, so he had to work his way up the depth chart, and it didn't take him long to get now the starting spot,
Mm,
above somebody else. So yeah, he's extremely high thought of, and you could see like going back to Hard Knocks real quick, you could see Bowen's reaction to Nubin. He had to keep it under wraps if he didn't want to seem too excited, right? So
mm.
he's very well thought of. So yeah, excellent point there.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I'm just going to kind of bring it back to Hard Knocks, but you're looking at that day too, and they're talking about McKinstry and Lassiter. But we heard Nubin's name first mentioned when they were at the combine. So it wasn't like, that's way before we even drafted him and they were already eyeing him up there. So you know that Bowen's excited.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, you got a first round talent in the second round, so
Yeah.
uh, that's great. I love it. I'm excited about that kid. And listen, I was a big McKinney fan. I was a big Landon Collins fan. So safeties are kind of my thing a bit. So
Mhm.
I'm really, really high on Nubin. I hope he proves me
Yeah.
right.
So let's do the big one then, the team record. What you going for?
So when I went through the schedule, when I looked at it, I think the ceiling is 9 to 10 wins,
Mhm.
when you look at it, and I'll say it this way for you, Craig, um, people talk about it's a more challenging schedule than last year. Well, when you look at the 4 tough teams they're playing this year, it's equivalent to the 4 tough teams they played last year. The other teams on the schedule, they can go either way, right? So you got a lot more either way games, and I think people realize when you really look at at the teams. So that's why, again, looking at it, I think 9 or 10 wins is where I had it, as the ceiling.
I always like talking about strength of schedule because it's one of these things that you look at and really it's guesswork because
Yeah.
so much changes in the landscape of the NFL from season to season. There's new players, there's players moving on, there's players joining from other teams, there's different coordinators, different head coaches. Like it's such a hard model to just go and look at last year's like winners and go, well, they won a lot of games, they're going to be great this year because it just doesn't work like that unless you're Kansas City.
Right, pretty much, right, exactly. Which is why, again, I take that different take of I don't look at a lot of those numbers or what their win percentage was. I just look at the team in general and what I know. Like, so when Dayball first came on, like, his first year when I was looking at the schedule, I was like, all right, well, he's going to get us at least 2 to 3 more wins automatically for being a better coach than what we had in Joe Judge, right? So when you factor that in, and then again, when you look, for example, like the Steelers, everybody's like, "Oh, we should lose that game." Well, they got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, right? Like they don't have much of a receiving core, so you really got to look at the team as opposed to, well, this is what their win record was last year. This is what their win percentage was. Like, no, just look at the team and judge it fairly. So, I mean,
Exactly.
again, that's
Cool.
my take. I may be a little more optimistic than most, but I also think I'm real as well.
Yeah, no, I think we've had a really, really good range across all of these, and we've pretty much gone from everything to up to 12. So,
Yeah.
as long as you're in that ballpark, I don't think you're any more optimistic or pessimistic than anybody, really. So,
Yeah.
um, well, that's it. That's all the questions done. So thanks very much for joining me for this sort of quick interview. Before you go,
Yeah.
we gave you an opportunity to do this last time. We'll give you an opportunity again, just in case anyone didn't see that one.
Yep.
Let the guys know where they can find you, and obviously the Rush guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, NewYorkGiantsRush.com, New York Giants Rush on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe, on Twitter. I'm at Joker Shawn 37. So you guys can, follow me there. And, yeah, check out the YouTube. It's really, we do a lot of things. We're on every Mondays at 8 PM Eastern time. So you guys, I know will have to watch it on recording, but, yeah, definitely check it out. And those are the place that, you can find us. And, yeah, we appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on, and again, allow me the opportunity to kind of say where we can be found and who I'm with.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, viewers and listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and all that lovely stuff. Our social links are in the description down below, as are Sean's, as are the Rush guys. Everything's down there, so check it out. But until next time, let's go Giants.
Go G men.